top 15 amazing sandcastles. Number 15. Mark Mason and Karen Fralich. Mark Mason leads Team Sandtastic, which is a collective of talented sand sculptors from around the world. They regularly appear at sandcastle festivals and have been responsible for some of the most amazing designs ever conceived, from a Jimi Hendrix-inspired purple haze design to a recreation of Mount Rushmore. Their particular specialties are underwater designs, and they've created works that involve the use of more than 200 tons of sand. The biggest they've made so far was in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, where, for the Republican presidential debates that were held in the area, they created a huge design featuring all of the candidates' faces, which required the use of 1,000 tons of sand. Number 14. Binz, Germany. Current world record holder for the tallest sandcastle ever constructed is this one that was built in Binz, Germany in 2019. At a height of just under 60 feet, it took 20 artists working full-time for 10 days to complete it, and needed 11,000 tons of special sand to be shipped in from the Netherlands that was easier to sculpt. The level of detail is unbelievable, with dragons guarding the walls, turrets and staircases across multiple levels, and knights guarding the upper tiers. This wasn't the first time that the record had been set here, as it's the site of an annual sandcastle building competition. The team behind it will be back again, and hope that their next design will be even bigger. Number 13. Noosa Main Beach. Noosa Main Beach in Queensland, Australia is a popular place for tourists and locals alike, but in recent years it's become even more of a special location thanks to the work of an artist called Aaron McCormick, who has been doing this for more than 17 years. He's made countless sandcastles with his trademark swirls and curves, and by the time he's finished each one when the sun begins to set, he places candles in the alcoves to finish off the magical illusion. It's even more amazing that he's able to complete them within just 4 hours, and all he needs is the sand from the beach and a few buckets of water. Number 12. El Arenal, Mallorca. El Arenal Beach on the Spanish island of Mallorca has long been a popular site for the construction of huge and elaborate sandcastles. Most years, at least 5 are built at the beginning of the summer and are continually maintained until the end of the tourist season before being demolished with bulldozers. This one, built in 2011, is one of the most famous designs the beach has seen and draws inspiration from Spanish castle architecture. While it may look impressive during the day, lighting has been installed that means it's illuminated once the sun is set and takes on a whole new mystique. It took more than a week to build and includes intricate details like crumbling brickwork and even slightly open gates. Number 11. Turkish Airlines Commission. In 2015, Turkish Airlines began a non-stop route that flew from Miami to Istanbul, and what better way to celebrate the event than to commission a giant sandcastle? It was built by the Sand Sculpture Company, and at the time, with a height of 45 feet and 10.25 inches, it became the tallest sandcastle ever. Called Imagination Castle, it took a week to build the mound of more than 1,800 tons of sand in a way that could be sculpted, and then a further 2 weeks for a team of 13 to carve the castle from it. It depicts towers and monuments rising above the clouds, and it looks like it's come straight out of a fairy tale. Number 10. Niteroi, Brazil. Rusty Croft is an American artist known for his elaborate designs, and in 2014 he headed to the Brazilian city of Niteroi to create a towering palace. He did it in conjunction with 2 companies that were looking to extend their presence in Brazil, and to do so they imported 20 truckloads of sand from Rio de Janeiro and combined it with material to ensure the finished structure could withstand wind and rain. It was 39 feet tall and led to some incredible images being taken with Brazil's most recognizable landmark, the Cristo Redentor, looking down on it in the background. It's so perfect it almost looks like there should be people living and working inside, and shows how the material can be carved into perfect lines to create the desired effect. At the time, this was one of the largest sandcastles to have ever been built, and once it was measured by an official for the record books, a bulldozer from one of the sponsors was needed to knock it down. Number 9. Dragon Dwellers. This sandcastle design is called Dragon Dwellers and was created for the Tournament of Champions in Harrison Hot Springs, British Columbia, Canada in 2008. It was built by Walter McDonald and William Lloyd, 2 sand sculptors from South Padre Island in Texas, and they described it as the opportunity to realize their own personal fantasies of castles and dragons. The huge dragon has a saddle strapped to its back with a castle on top of it. and the attention to detail is insane. There are grooves in the saddle that arch over where the dragon's scales are, and the fiery beast has a smirking grin as it lies there for a rest. It's almost unbelievable that they were able to make this from natural sand in just 4 days, and is one example of the reasons why they're seen as two of the most imaginative sand artists in the world. Number 8. Modern design. Traditionally, sandcastles take a historical design and rely on drawbridges, turrets, and armaments. But this sculpture that was built in 2018 brings things into the 21st century. It's based upon contemporary architectural techniques of clean edges and shapes, rather than each element being functional. It's all about the way that it looks. It's been built so well you'd almost believe this was made from concrete, and it wouldn't look out of place as a new museum or a home. The castle was designed by Calvin Siebert, who has become renowned for building geometrically shaped sand sculptures. And he's done a whole series of them based on the same principles. One of the cleverest things that he does is the ability to compress the sand so much that parts of his structures overhang beyond their foundations, something that's extremely difficult to do with such crumbly building material. Number 7. Staten Island. In 2016, sand artist Matt Long traveled to a beach on Staten Island to show what's possible within a relatively short period of time. Rather than focusing on huge structures with special sand, he uses materials that are available on the beach he's working on and creates his pieces within a matter of hours. Equipped with all the tools he needs to create intricate structures, he likes to build among other beach users and adds an extra highlight to their day. This castle, for example, was finished in just 5 hours, but the level of detail is incredible. Matt travels around the beaches of the US to show off his talent and to teach some of his techniques to anyone that's interested. It's people like Matt who prove that you don't need teams of people to make amazing sandcastles, but with the right preparation and skill, you can do it all by yourself. Before we move on, be sure to subscribe to Top 5s with notifications on. Number 6. Toshihiko Hosaka. Toshihiko Hosaka has been creating sand sculptures for more than 20 years and sees even the smallest part of a beach as the ideal canvas. He goes far beyond building just castles, and everything he does is well-conceived pieces of art in its own right. Despite the seemingly impossible shapes that he forms, the only material used is sand and water, and then once the structure is complete, he uses a special hardening spray that prevents it from falling down within a few days. One of his favorites is his Alice in Wonderland-inspired piece that featured all of the famous characters surrounding a solemn-looking Alice. And in 2017, he won the Fulong International Sand Sculpture Art Festival with his depiction of his hero, 16th century expert swordsman Musashi Miyamoto. Hosaka continues to tour Japan to build his monuments on the beaches, and if you've ever been to the country and seen an unusual piece of sand art, the chances are that it was done by him. Number 5. Booking.com Sandcastle. When it comes to promotional techniques, the commission of a giant sandcastle can be extremely effective, but probably the most ingenious was one that was built in 2019 on behalf of Booking.com. They hired Matt Long, a well-regarded sand sculptor, to create a home out of sand at Luna Park on Coney Island, and the finished design, which used 100 tons of sand, was 18 feet long and 8 feet tall. It was part of the Coney Island Beach Sand Sculpture Competition, and while it didn't win any awards, it was definitively the most spoken about design. This was much more than an artistic structure though, as the building was put on the website and made available to rent to their customers. It came with a double bed and a drinks trolley, a sofa, and even a small bathroom with a working shower. Of course, none of the furniture is made from sand, and for those lucky enough to be able to stay here, the company included extras such as a VIP pass to the beach, a sunrise yoga class, and dinner on the Coney Island boardwalk. Before you try and book it for yourself, this was unfortunately just a temporary offer and was only available for 1 weekend, so hopefully they'll one day make a larger sand hotel to give more people a chance to experience beach living for themselves. Number 4. Minas Tirith. Minas Tirith is the legendary city that featured in The Lord of the Rings. It was used to defend against troops from Mordor, and thanks to the Peter Jackson movies, has become one of the most famous fictional castles in the world. So it was surely only a matter of time before someone decided to build it in real life. Joseph Alvarez, a sand sculptor, thought that it was the perfect design to build on a beach, so he began to draw up his designs and set to work. He used a special sandy loam that holds together more than normal sand and did all of the work himself. It was quite a commitment and took him 2 entire summers to complete, but by the time he had finished, it was a masterpiece. The level of attention is true to the designs used for the movies, and at 10 feet tall, it was stable enough that he could stand on top of it. The entire thing was just made from sand and water, apart from a brace that he places on top that protected it from birds. In the winter months, he covered it in a tarp so he could continue the next year. But it turned out that despite being able to repel the onslaught of orcs and trolls, Minas Tirith was vulnerable to something that's much more common: rain. A storm passed over on the second winter, and the sandy Minas Tirith didn't stand a chance. The building collapsed, and Alvarez was forced to accept that his project had been lost for good. Number 3. Sudarsan Pattnaik. Sudarsan Pattnaik is one of the most famous sand artists in the world. He started to learn his craft on the beaches of India and has since traveled to countless competitions to show off his talents. The beach of Puri City in his home country remains his favorite place to sculpt. However, it was here that he set successive world records for the tallest sandcastles in the years between 2006 and 2010. He is also known for making unusual sand structures, many of which highlight particular causes or celebrations, and holds the record for the largest collection of Santas ever made from sand. This was his crowning achievement, however, and broke the world record in 2017 titled World Peace. It was 48 feet and 8 inches tall and amazingly was all done by hand. Usually for sculptures like this, machines are used to collect enough sand in one place. But for this attempt, it was Pattnaik and 45 students from the Sudarsan Institute that piled it all in one place before beginning to sculpt it. It took them 9 days to build the mound and another week to carve the intricate images of animals, people, and monuments. These included doves, portraits of Gandhi and Nelson Mandela, Indian-style castles, and even a large sand staircase leading up to it. Number 2. The Beach Home. People travel across the world for the chance to spend their vacations on sunny and stunning beaches. But for those who live near such beautiful oases, it almost seems as if there's no greater place they can be. One resident of Rio de Janeiro has found a way to get even closer to the sea, though, and has been living on the beach in sandcastles for more than 20 years. Known as the Sand King, Marcio Misael Matolius built amazing structures that he calls home, and once the weather inevitably knocks one down, he simply moves further along the beach and builds another one. With no rent to pay, Matolius lives a life most would be envious of. As a tourist attraction in his own right, he spends his days showing visitors around his castle and playing golf on the beach. He uses a wooden framework to give his homes more rigidity than he'd get by just using sand. And inside there's a room that's about 32 square feet where he sleeps and reads books. While this is a small living space, when you've got the beach on your doorstep, it's all that you'd ever need. He cooks on a stove outside and uses the showers at the fire station that's across the street from the beach. Surprisingly, his sandcastle needs very little maintenance, but he does need to water the turrets every day to prevent them from caving in on his bedroom. He's saved a fortune in rent over the decades, but has been lucky enough to enjoy prime beachfront real estate that would otherwise cost far beyond what a normal living wage could afford. The only costs he has to cover are for food, and to do this he runs a second-hand bookshop from next to his castle. It certainly isn't a life fit for every king, but Matolius loves his way of life and even has his own crown and scepter. He first learned how to build sandcastles after being given a book as a child about the architect Antoni Gaudi, and while he originally only intended to keep his books there, he slept in it one night and decided he'd live rent-free for the rest of his life. He admits to one drawback though, and that's the way the sand is very good at retaining heat. Some nights, after a particularly hot day, it's impossible to go inside for more than a few minutes, so instead, he stays the night at his friend's flat nearby. Number 1. Sleeping Beauty's Castle. Every year on the banks of the River Seine in Paris, truckloads of sand are brought in for the Paris Plagues Festival, and a giant beach is created. Sand sculptors come from across the world to show off their talents, but in 2011 there was a special guest display that was put on by Disney. To celebrate the anniversary of the opening of Disneyland Paris, they commissioned the construction of a sand version of the world's most famous castle, and the one you'll see at every park, the one that Sleeping Beauty lives in. Standing 16 feet tall, it took 7 sculptors more than 300 hours to complete and required more than 60 tons of sand. It immediately became one of the most popular sites on the river and stayed standing for more than a month before it was finally knocked down. Subscribe to Top 5s for more and check out some of our other popular videos.